Hi, this is Abdul Bharti and welcome to another episode of TFiR Insight powered by RackN. And once again, today we have with us Rob Hirschfeld, CEO and founder of RackN. Rob, welcome to the show.
Swap, thanks. It's great to be on.
Last time we discussed Outpost. We kind of, you explained what Outpost is. We got a very good overview of what it is all about. And this time I think we are going to talk about the tech components of Outpost. So I'm curious, can you take some time to explain what are the core components of Outpost?
So Outpost is really Amazon putting their infrastructure in their customer's data center, in your data center. So it is hardware that's been created, designed, and managed by Amazon, by the web services team, specifically for Amazon infrastructure, but they are making it available in your data center. So you call up Amazon, you go to an online ordering form, and they show up with a rack of servers, or racks, depending on how many you've purchased, pre-integrated and wired using the hardware that Amazon designs, something called Nitro, specifically for their data center. And that's a pretty unique offering. This isn't, go to, an online retailer or your supplier or systems integrator and ask for servers from the normal way, like a Dell, HP, Lenovo, Supermicro infrastructure. This is a specific hardware to Amazon. And from that perspective, that's one of the very distinguishing facts of Outposts, is that they are using their own hardware for this infrastructure. Pre-wired, there's some really nice details about what they've built. They're using their control plane design, so they slide machines in for high repeatability, very easy maintenance, and the systems will slide in attached to a backplane that they've designed in their infrastructure that has the networking and power pre-integrated. And so it's very nice hyperscaler style design for the servers.
Amazon is bringing a lot of their component, into your infrastructure. So of course, they have some expectation, what your infrastructure would look like. At the same time, your infrastructure also has some expectations that what it is receiving. So can you talk about this, expectations from both sides and where do they meet?
Yeah, it's a really important point for Outposts. They really don't have any expectations except the floor and power capabilities and some networking requirements so that they can come back to your infrastructure. This is really an appliance. You do not open the box. You don't touch it. If you need services on it, Amazon sends people out to fix it. Really you're responsible for power and the space. And then Amazon's going to connect it back to their infrastructure. So this isn't your gear. I mean, you pay for it up front. This is a multi-year contract, and you still pay for the Amazon services behind the scenes. But from a tech perspective, this is really an appliance. You don't get to control it. You don't get the networking. It is, inside of those racks is Amazon infrastructure, Amazon management, Amazon security, and very critically, Amazon's control plane. One of the things that's really distinctive about Outposts is that it is a SaaS managed, or you could say cloud managed infrastructure. You use Amazon's APIs in the nearest region to that rack for control. You don't have there's no local control of that infrastructure. If you want to spin up machines or change a service or configure it in any way, you're not talking to the boxes on the local site. You are going back to Amazon, talking to Amazon's API for that region, and then they delegate control as if it's basically a small sub-region inside of their data center. So the way to think of Outposts is not as a rack of gear on your infrastructure. It's really an Amazon data center extension sitting in your data center. And there's some really serious security implications that Amazon discusses openly about this challenge, right? They're literally taking the edge of their data center and extending it into remote sites. And that creates some really interesting security questions on both sides of this equation.
So what are some of the critical security questions that either Amazon has been talking about publicly or customers are concerned?
Yeah, so a lot of this hinges on their use of Nitro, which is some internal infrastructure they use with a whole bunch of sidecar technologies for encrypting data in flight and data at rest in memory on the systems. And so part of the way they've messaged the whole Outpost story is that it really relies on the advanced security components that they've built into the hardware. And that means that it's, you can push a button on the systems and wipe the entire infrastructure. At the hard disk data, right, it's effectively removing the keys. So this is like trusted platform modules taken another level. It means that they're using that same hardware encryption to do security. So they're securing infrastructure back to Amazon's data centers. And they really position this as something they've only been willing to do because of this security posture that they're really extending their control plane for their data center somewhere else. And that means they have to have control of the encryption, the network topologies, a whole bunch of things. So, if you're thinking, wow, they've really extended their data center into somebody else's site, they're doing that because they feel like they have the hardware components, the security at the hardware layers to ensure that their data center isn't compromised by having pieces of it in an extended domain. From a user's perspective, that really does mean that while you've bought those servers and you've brought them onto your facility, they're still Amazon servers, right? For better or for worse, you have to trust Amazon to secure it. If you decide you want that data back from those servers, you're not going to go up to the hard drives and take them out and get your data back. That is not, that's not going to be workable. You're going to have to egress the data off of an Outposts the same way you would egress data off of any Amazon infrastructure.
Whoa, interesting.
Yeah, it's there's a lot.
Mm-hmm. I think we might have to deep dive into that also at some point, Also, in terms of location, how flexible is it? Where can you bring in the hardware to run? Are there any restrictions, limitations, or how flexible is it? Where can you run it?
Yeah, it's a good question. Right there, it is data center infrastructure hardware, and their target in how this is supposed to work is it's in places where you want low latency, high density storage, things like that. But it's still data center infrastructure. So it's a standard conventional rack. It is going to have floor weight concerns and considerations, just like any rack. This isn't just pick individual machines. They are sending you a full rack. The smallest order is a half populated rack, which is still a lot of capacity and a lot of weight and a lot of power. So all of those things are something you would consider. If you're thinking about, so that means that it's not a server closet in a grocery store. This is something, there might be a, IT infrastructure area on a factory or in a campus. Typically in a colo data center would be what my expectations would be. So this isn't a redefinition of what server infrastructure would be. It's not edge from that perspective, where you're thinking about putting a couple of servers in a remote location, or you're tying yourself into, a low energy, a low power situation like a cell phone tower or a windmill, or a tractor or a car. This is really data center infrastructure that's extended onto, it's really a question of how it's managed rather than how it's defined as an infrastructure perspective.
So do you have any Amazon rack at RackN?
I do not. I do not. I'm not. These are really expensive. My understanding is the minimum entry is a $200,000 or $250,000 minimum rack footprint. And RackN doesn't actually buy and manage infrastructure like that. So it's not a toy I can afford to get. We're helping people build $500 Pi infrastructures to compete with something like that. And so it's a totally different story. And that's one of the things about this. This is not toy infrastructure from that perspective. And also we should talk through the networking pieces, because those are also very specific to Amazon.
Right. And when you bring it in there into your infrastructure, how do you integrate with your existing, services or whatever? Because you are bringing something in from Amazon into your own infrastructure. Can you talk about that?
It's basically the same cross-connect strategies that you already have. So what they're doing is that you're providing a cross-connect egress, just like you would be doing any cross-connect point into an Amazon infrastructure. It just is local from the top of your rack. So if you have cross-connects with other infrastructure providers that are allowing you to access Amazon infrastructure, then you're also going to have the same thing from a local perspective into your infrastructure. My understanding of the way that's structured is that it's still egress billing. So there isn't like some secret backdoor created by Amazon in this case where you can move data to your Outposts and then leak it out of Outposts onto your facility and sort of exit your data, you're still in the same situation where data leaving that Outpost is considered an egress as if it was in a cloud data center. And these are still early. So some of the things that we're discussing are, I'm sure, going to evolve as Amazon gets feedback on how these initial Outpost deployments go. But yeah, right now they've been careful not to create a loophole where you buy Outposts and then bypass other billing options. It's designed as premium infrastructure, not as a cheap way to get EC2 instances.
Rob, thanks for explaining these core components and how it's integrated into. But there are a lot of other questions that are still, need to be answered. I'm just curious, what does the control plane look like? How is it different from other competitors? And so, but I think we need one more session, one more episode to discuss those points. And I look forward to talking to you again.
I'm looking forward to digging in and putting this in perspective of the broader industry. There's a lot to talk about there too. Thank you.